I wanted to show you how to process any events from GitHub using a Pipedream workflow, and I'm going to focus on merges for pull requests to a specific branch, and I'll use the master branch in this example. This is just an example. You can actually extend this template to really any GitHub event, like stars or issue, comments, or really anything. I'll show you how to configure that, and then I'll show you the event format that GitHub sends. The event format is pretty specific to the event itself, so a PR event is quite different than an issue event since the data is completely separate. But I think that you'll see really how to use Pipedream to observe the event that comes in, to parse it, manipulate it, and then hopefully extend this for any given event type. I'll send you this template URL, and when you receive it, you'll see an option to fork the workflow. When you fork the workflow, it will automatically generate this HTTP endpoint URL specific to your workflow. So any event sent from GitHub will be pointed here, and then any of those events trigger the workflow. So GitHub Webhooks allow us to send events from GitHub. They allow you to filter on specific events, so I'll show you how that works. And then any of those events that get sent, again, hit this endpoint URL and run the remaining steps of the workflow. I'm going to set that up first, just so we can see some events coming in. So I'll copy this URL, go back to my GitHub webhook, so this test repo, and I'll add a webhook. Payload URL is our endpoint URL. The content type, it's going to be a lot easier to work with JSON, and I'll show you why in just a moment. We actually convert any JSON posted to an endpoint to its JavaScript object equivalent, which makes it much easier to work with Node. The secret is actually used to create a hex digest that GitHub sends in every request as an HTTP header. I'm going to use that just to make sure I secure any of these webhooks and validate that the requests are indeed coming from GitHub. You don't have to use that step, but I'll show you how that works. It's kind of a neat little feature to have for this workflow. Just going to enter a simple secret. I'll keep SSL verification. This is where I select the events that trigger the webhook. So any events in my repo will send HTTP requests to Pipedream. I am going to uncheck pushes and just say I want events for pull requests here. Again, this page is where you can select any of the events that GitHub will send you notifications for. There is not one for commits. There's one for commit comments. PRs is the closest that you can get because they're a bundle of commits that you can extract and you can get information from the GitHub API. There's a lot of documentation there. So again, I hope that this workflow will show you how to get started with that, and then you can take a look at the GitHub API documentation and write any node code to hit any of those endpoints in Pipedream. I'll keep this selected for pull requests, and then I'll add the webhook. When I do, I go back to my endpoint URL. So I didn't add, this is a great example of troubleshooting. This is unexpected. I didn't add a GitHub secret here yet. So let me actually add some of the parameters here that are required for this workflow to run. So the secret I added back there was ABC123. The target branch that I'm going to use in this step, I'll walk you through this step in just a moment. This step of our workflow basically asks, what is the target branch that the PR is getting merged into? And really only looks for PRs on that branch. And if you're merging PRs into a development or a stage branch, for instance, this workflow will ignore them. I'm going to have my target branch be master, so I only focus on PRs that are merged to master, and then run the remaining steps of the workflow when the PR targets master. I will deploy this again, now that I've made those changes. And the cool thing about Pipedream is I can actually just replay the event that came in by clicking that replay icon. So let me walk you through part of the workflow now. I received the HTTP request. When you add a webhook in GitHub, they send this special ping request to you, which just has this little Zen message. This is useless to us, and we want to filter these events out. The first thing that I do before I even look at the event is to validate the webhook secret. Again, this code is collapsed by default because it really doesn't matter for the purposes of the workflow, but I can expand it, and I am computing based on the GitHub secret the same digest that GitHub computes and sends in the request as an HTTP header. And then I validate that the signature, the X-Hub signature that GitHub sends, is the same as the computed signature that I've computed here. So this is really cool. I can import any NPM packages in Pipedream, run any node code, and operate on any headers or part of the body of the HTTP request that comes in. So take a look at this code just to see end-to-end how it works. We ran that step. It ran successfully because if the digest that GitHub passes doesn't actually match the signature that I compute, we use $end, which is a special Pipedream function that's exposed in every code step that allows me to say, I want to end the workflow immediately, and no other code before that proceeds. So it's like a throw or a return in the context of Pipedream. I can add an optional message here. Again, we correctly passed through this step. The webhook event came from GitHub, and it matched the signature or the secret that I added here. We move on to the next step. And then I say if event.body.zen, and that's true. We do actually have data in event.body.zen that I end here. One thing to note is that the event that gets passed here and sent to the HTTP endpoint, that is included in, it's passed as a parameter to every single step of a Pipedream workflow. So event here is the event data. Event.body is the HTTP payload, and then I can access properties of that payload because it was JSON, and again, Pipedream converts any JSON payload sent via HTTP to its JavaScript object equivalent. So I can use dot notation here to extract that Zen property from the body. And then again, if that exists, I end, because this is a GitHub ping event. This isn't useful to me, right? It's not a PR. So let's take a look now at a real event. I'm going to go back to my test Pipedream repo. I'm going to edit this README. I'll just remove the foo here, testing foo, and then say README. This is an awesome README. I'm going to commit those changes with a test message, and I'll create a new branch. This opens up a pull request that I can create. Let's take a look back here on this repo. So I saw a new event come in, and it says this pull request, that's a typo. I can modify that. This pull request isn't closed or merged. So this step takes, again, the data from the event, and first it goes through a series of checks. It asks, is the event type, which is passed in this X GitHub event header, is the event type not equal to pull request? So if I were sending other events from my GitHub webhook, again, issue comments, stars, if I were sending those to this endpoint URL, I want to filter out everything that's not a pull request and then end early. So this was a pull request, but then I ask, is the action something different than closed? I opened a pull request here. This met that condition. I can take a look at event.body.action here. This pull request was opened. So I only care about closed pull requests because this condition effectively is a merge to my target branch. So I'm asking, is the event.body.action anything different than closed? Is it opened or is it updated? I don't care about those events. Or if that pull request is not merged, I also don't care about those requests. Again, so I'm just removing every event I don't care about and ending the workflow early. I'll deploy that change again for that typo I made, remove the S here in that end message. And then finally I ask, is the target branch equal to the branch against this pull request? So this event deep down in, this property deep down in our payload, body.pullRequest.base.ref, that is the target branch of the pull request. Okay, the master branch here. Let me go ahead and merge this pull request. I get a new event because GitHub sent a webhook. It triggered my workflow, and I'll select that. We actually ran this end to end because if we pass all these checks, we have a pull request, the action is closed, right? This is a merged pull request. Again, I can take a look at pull request dot merged is true. And then the target branch was equal to master. So at this point, I've passed all of my checks. I have a closed pull request. Now I want to do something with it. So I can add a new action here. And I just want to show you how actions work. I could run any node.js code and then import any NPM packages or do anything I want here to talk to any API. Or I can use any of the pre-selected apps. I'm just going to use Slack as an example to show you how this works. I want to send a message to a Slack channel. Actually, I won't do Slack in this example. Let me do email. I'm just going to send myself an email. That'll be a little easier. So the email me action emails the email address that I used to register with Pipedream. And the subject and the text, just like with code steps, I can actually reference any of the event data that was passed. Steps, by the way, I'll show you our documentation on this. Steps is an object, and it allows me to refer to any of the data returned from previous steps in my workflow. So I'm not doing it here, but I can have a step. A step is just a function. I can have a step that receives input and then returns some output, and that output is actually returned at what we call these step exports. So I can export data by setting some data at a property of the this object within a step. This refers to the current step. When I do that, say this.exported data equals something, I can access that data later in future steps using steps.stepname.exported data. So as an example, I can say this.merged PR equals true. I will X out of this real quick. I'll deploy that change. And then I will replay this event from the inspector. It'll run again. And now, when I say this.mergedPR equals true, I now have this variable available to me in future steps. Steps.filter non-merged PR events, that's the name of my step, dot merge PR property, that's equal to true. Okay, so this allows you to return data from steps. Again, steps are just functions, they receive input, and you can set exports or return values using this pattern. So take a look at the docs to learn more. Now I'll go ahead and add that email step. The subject, I just want to notify myself there was a merged PR for this specific repo. PR merged for repo, and then I can start to address parts of the event object just by typing event. I get this autocomplete that pulls up. Event.body, I know this is in the repository section, and the name of the repo is what I want. We show you the value here for this property of the most recent event you've sent, just to make it obvious how that value will get interpolated. PR merge for repo here. And then maybe I just want to get a link to the PR. So let me take a look at, let's see, pull request. And there should be the HTML URL. I'll just grab that. So I can actually hover over this property and say copy path, and I'll go back down to my email event, CPR here. Step.trigger.event, all the way down to that URL. Let me deploy this. And I will send myself another event. And that email gets sent with this subject and this text. So again, I can add another step here. I can run any Node.js code. I can connect to any of these apps. If you see an app that we don't have, then please let us know, because we're happy to add more. Running Node.js code, again, you can really do anything here. You can import an npm package and run any build process using Node that you like. Connect to DigitalOcean, AWS. There's a lot of stuff that you can do. Really, anything you can do with Node, you can do in Pipedream. So I hope this helps. And again, please let us know either on Slack here or via our support email if you have any questions. Thanks.